Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight we're here with Jen, the Arcane Observer, and we'll be talking more about powers of the mind, this time focusing on research into this topic through government and other private organizations. Excuse me. So, we'll be getting into that in just a minute. About things that are going on with the show. Good things, luckily. First is we now officially have a merchandise website webpage, and I'll be including that in the episode description from now on, and so you all can check it out. One of the designs was made by my friend who has done most of my visual designs, the dust jacket designs, and but the other one was made by Sweets. The And you can see the original logo, the one that you all are most familiar with, is one from my other friend that did a lot of my visual designs. But then the other one with the ghost in the graveyard and everything, with the microphone, which is amazing, that Sweets designed that. So special thanks to everyone who's helped this show in all these different ways, and also pointed out that there's this website. For anyone interested in doing similar things, it's called Bonfire. And this isn't a sponsored thing or anything because I don't know how to go about that. But um, the nice thing about it is there's no money up front. Yeah, you don't have to pay money up front to start with them. And that was always a big problem for me before. Big reason why I didn't have a merchandise store page for a long time. So, but now we do. And there's a couple designs, and I eventually will do more, but for now, two is good. And so that's the first announcement. So you can get your own Salsido Paranormal T-shirt or a sweatshirt or sweater, not sweater, sweatshirt or hoodie, which is really amazing. I'm gonna have to order one at some point soon, probably next month. But yeah, so really grateful for that, and that wouldn't happen without having um, great friends that I talk with all the time, and figuring that out. So the other announcement is I will be starting a new Patreon project. You'll be able to hear the live recordings on my Discord without being part of Patreon. But if you want to hear the recordings after the fact, you'll have to sign up for my Patreon page, which it does have uh, uh, paid membership levels there, and the lowest one is $1. So even if you just, I understand money is tight, and in all times, usually, a lot of ways, a lot of times, words are hard. But no, money. I know not everyone has money, and I totally understand that. I don't have a ton of money, so that's why I made that lowest rank system there, or tier there, $1. So, but yeah, once I get done with those recordings, I will be posting there, and these recordings will be of me reading my novels that I've written, just like for I don't know, half an hour to maybe an hour at a time, and just going through as much as I can, because for many reasons an audiobook is not. Uh, I don't like the options for that I have as of right now. So this is the best, and I've had a couple of requests for audio versions of my novels. So this is the best way I could figure out how to do this um, without too much difficulty. So those are the announcements. You'll see posts and everything as we go forward. If you sign up for the Patreon, again, there's the membership tier levels are $1, $5, $10, and $20, and then and with that you get all the previous content that I posted there, as well as all ongoing content, which right now would be the trick or treat shows, and then there will be my reading of my novels, which will be for anyone who's looked into them at all. The first one I'll do will probably be the Red Lake Entity, and then the next one will be From Unknown. And I'm working on another novel, and once I finish with that one, I will read that one as well. So it'll be a very long, ongoing series. Like I said, I can't read too much at a time. But anyway, that's the announcements. Thank you all for sitting through all of that. I would rather not even have to do Patreon, but at the same time, doing these shows, it takes time and there are expenses. Also, please check out all the links in every episode description for all the friends that help out with the show. Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio, both the show and the network. Trouble Minds Radio, KUAP, digital broadcasting, and that's where you can find this show as well as many other amazing shows, and along with Trouble Minds itself. And then, of course, as always, please check out Jen's page and all the amazing shows that she has done, and really appreciate that because this stuff does not just happen instantly when we want it to. It takes a lot of time and focus to get it all done. So with that, yeah. So this is sort of a continuation of last week's show, and thank you for posting that link in there, Sweets. And so yeah, this is a continuation of the last show, and also thank you all for being here and listening in. But with that, we can get to the topic. And I have several links I posted in the chat. If everyone scrolls up, and I'll include those in a channel in Discord. I won't put those all in the episode description, but I think I have a channel set aside for information for all the shows. But with that, I can finally get to Jen. Welcome to the show. I'm sorry about if I was too fast there for you. Hello.
No, you're fine. How you doing?
Okay.
Good.
Just glad to do this and to have you on the show as always. Thank you for sitting through all the announcements and everything. So
No, very exciting developments. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's I had requests for audiobooks for a while, like I said, and I couldn't do them the traditional way. So, and then the merchandise, I still, the day that it happened that everything was finalized, I didn't even make a post right away because I was just so shocked that it actually worked. So
Yeah.
Is yeah. So, but
it's perfect.
so yeah, this
start out with.
Yeah, a couple of designs to start with, and then we'll go with more later on, and maybe I'll talk to some of you all out there in the audience who are artistic in any way, and we'll see what we can do as far as if we want to collaborate or whatever, and go from there. But so yeah, this is I was really surprised at how many articles that I was able to find and post about this topic of all this research into all these things with remote viewing and telepathy and being able to read minds and everything. There was more posts than I sort of expected to find that were useful, that actually were articles and that had information in them. And because sometimes I'm sure you've run across this, you can do research into something and you'll find a link and you'll click it and it'll be like one little paragraph and the rest will be ads. So
yeah. I mean, there's so much on it too, and I mean, finding all those articles, I'm not surprised that there's so much out there. I mean, and people are talking about it, but there's still plenty to talk about with it. And I'm not sure which article you want to start out with, or which theory out there, or which story, but there really are just so many. It's pretty creepy, actually, just the idea that they have such an interest in those things. And but it doesn't seem, it's not that strange, I think, if you think about the origins of military and government systems and governing in general. It doesn't surprise me that they have gone down all these different avenues of, especially with the funding that they may have and the access that they have to certain individuals in positions of influence and control, that they can further delve into a lot of these, I guess you could call it, extrasensory perception, or rather it's some type of technology where they're working with, weaponization of those characteristics and individuals, or like literally making mechanical, I guess, tools, computer systems, or devices, I guess might be a better word, that they use, kind of like the Nazi bell and stuff like that, where they were able to sort of, I mean, I've heard about even like machines that basically, like the Montauk thing, was talking about a machine that could kind of open a portal to another realm, or, cause people to have, sort of telepathic experience. So I've heard of things, there's just so much to talk about
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, I was thinking we could start with Montauk because that is a major one. It's one we've talked about briefly before, but there's articles on that. One of the articles I found is here's what some people think happened at Montauk Air Force Station, and this goes again into it goes into the known history, or the accepted history, and I think that's really sort of what we'll be talking about all night here. Is there's the generally accepted stuff, and then there is the quote unquote the stuff that is called conspiracy theories and or just fiction, which I always wonder about that, because when there's so many people that are saying things about a place, and they say it for years and they say it for decades, I have a hard time thinking that there's not something there, even if they're wrong about some things. I feel like there's probably something going on there that is more than what, of course, they want us to know about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the Long Island itself, a lot of the eugenic programs, like the early weird experiments that kind of eventually went over into Germany and all of that, were happening at that same location we were talking about, just on the tip there of Long Island. So a lot of the institutions and things like that were experimenting with genes, working with creating, not gene therapy, but just trying to figure out, crack the code of how to affect genes, or how to use, radiation or anything like that to somehow make basically like a superhuman or something. It's a lot of what that they're talking about when you go into like the eugenics programs that they had on Long Island. And then with, even interestingly enough though, if you go over to Nazi Germany, similar things, but they were not just working on, like, it wasn't just science. They were going to these extremes of, you have the Thule Society in Germany that was kind of bled out from these different government organizations, or at least government studies. I mean, they were very serious about that. That's in another country, but I mean, I think it still kind of falls under the same banner of the Thule Society in Germany, that they were trying to use occult practices to make contact with um, alien intelligences, or entities, or even people, from other planets or other dimensions, or whatever the cause. Higher intelligences that they could get information from about secret parts of human history and things like that, or locations of, the Ark of the Covenant or the Spear of Destiny. They were trying to use all of those different means of telepathy and things like that to communicate with whoever those higher intelligence might be. But some of that started out on Long Island, and then with the Montauk, I think that in a lot of ways they could be connected in some way.
Yeah,
they're very similar.
Yeah, because it started out as the base started off as a hub for the U.S. military. It was created by the U.S. Army, according to this article here in 1942. It was, of course, at the time it was known as Fort Hero, which later on was Camp Hero. And the base was it kind of went active and inactive over times. It had different weapons and things in place there. It was a defense base. And later on, the Air Force used it when it became the Montauk Air Force Station. They used the base as a Cold War defense against, of course, the Soviet Union, the Russians, and And in the 50s, the army shuttered the place for a little while there, and that's when the Air Force sort of started to take over. And it was a radar station and everything else. And so, but then over time, when it was closed in 1981, around that time, and going forward, there was people started to talk about the place still being active, just in a very secretive way, and about military and scientists there conducting experiments on in the area, everything from mind control to teleportation, and of course, there's the people that say that they were kidnapping boys and experimenting on them in all kinds of ways and trying to develop powers within them. And so this is this thing. Then this has come up in books over the years by people that say that they were involved in that program. There's the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, written by Preston Nichols, according to this article here. And it goes over many of the experiments that supposedly took place there. Now, again, even if there's some of this that is mistaken or in any way, and it's the same as I was talking about with anything paranormal, you only need one or two experiences that were real for there to be something still there going on, even if the rest is misinterpreted or just whatever the ways it can go wrong. And these are ideas that continue to this day about the area. Obviously, there's still websites putting out articles about this place. And to a degree, Stranger Things was apparently based on some of that, having to do with psychic powers through the use of electromagnetic experiments that the U.S. government developed. So yeah, that's the sort of the start of that. And this is just one location and one set of experiments or one sort of operation that was going on or project that was going on. Even if it's only a fraction of the size of what all the stories and or rumors say it is, it's still something there. And I still wonder about it, especially since, there's the other underground levels, you're not allowed to go there. And I can understand some of that being safety or whatever if they're falling apart. But the problem is if there's more there than just that, then why is it still there and why is it not being used by people still?
Yeah, I think that one of the big things that might be a part of why, it is these military bases, or that there's something to do with the government or military being involved, is the access that they have. I mean, this might not necessarily be the rule for it, but I mean, the fact that they have access to the soldiers that are enlisted, and that they could possibly, because they have access to them and because they could possibly do some of these experiments on them or involve them in them as part of, operations that they might be doing, in war games or something like that, they could possibly. That's probably the reason. I mean, that's probably a big part of it, is that they have access to those individuals and they can use them in these types of studies. It's the same that we saw with like MK Ultra, how it's kind of leaning into the mental institutions that were so prevalent at the time. Much more so than I think than we realize. I mean, how huge these institutions were, and what massive, like huge amounts of the population that were actually, entombed in those mental institutions, but partook in things like the studies that were done with MK Ultra, or in this case, you have like the Montauk Project. Well, it could have been that a lot of these experiments involved, the military personnel, and it comes out that it seems that way because we hear stories now from, soldiers, from veterans that have accounts of whether it's UFO technology or other types of strange technology. And it's just so tightly linked, probably because, they're able to get away with it easier that way because the person's sort of signed away. And if something were to happen to them, it could be also explained away through some other means as well. But I heard about with the Montauk thing that there was like some type of instrument that put out some type of a frequency or something of the kind And that it was, isn't that kind of the gist of it? It was that it would put out this type of frequency that would change the brain waves, and that the person would then be able to sort of, I don't know if it actually changed the literal environment or if it allowed that the people would see or would begin to encounter what appeared to be in that environment or was being revealed to them that was already present in that environment. Or it could have been a combination of literally conjuring something up, and in addition to that, making it visible with these instruments in some way. But the Montauk Monster was basically the idea that something had come through, and the soldiers were seeing it, and they were afraid that somehow it was going to get stuck in this universe. And then, what would they do about it? Or that they themselves would get, possibly stuck in some other universe, or that there was some type of blending or bleed through between some other dimension and this one. It's kind of the gist. And then with the whole thing of, the show that they've put off of that, I don't know. I mean, I haven't. Stranger Things was a really cool show. I think it's a good way to describe all of, what might have been happening. It's obviously probably sensationalized. And the idea that the Montauk Monster got out, I think is kind of what it looks like in the show, is that these other extra dimensional beings got out. And that's where there's a lot of basis of truth if there is into that storyline. That there was something that had come through. And that's why they have like the Montauk Monster and things like that I've heard about. But no doubt that they were definitely probably experimenting with, but I don't know if it'd be for warfare or if they have a genuine interest, in bringing about some type of, bringing something from another dimension to try to gain knowledge from it, or, so many possibilities of what the motivation might be. If it's just for science, just to, see if they can open a portal. I mean, even the concept of opening a portal in general to another dimension just sounds so incredible and insane that the government would be trying to do something of the kind. But these were mad scientists. I mean, if you look at that time period and look at sci-fi at the time too, all the sci-fi authors coming out and their links to things like Scientology and, with L. Ron Hubbard and everything, his connection with NASA, as we all know and talked about, that in the connections with Aleister Crowley and the Ordo Templi, that they were trying to make contact with these other entities to gain information and to create some type of technology and maybe to bring about some kind of super race or some type of golden age, some kind of, I don't know, a new eon. There's a lot of their mythos, it sounds like.
Yeah, there's, I mean, we've all heard of things like the various projects that were supposedly under like MK Ultra. I believe that's mentioned in one of these articles here, but I don't remember which one now. You read through enough and you forget where things are at. But there's the whole idea of using various chemicals to basically try to get people into altered states of consciousness to to get them to do things and or to possibly sense things in a different way and react in different ways. And then of course there's the whole Stargate thing, Project Stargate. That is really, it's amazing how often that word has come up over the years in different ways. And in the idea of, again, there's this possible connection between the idea of that being a portal in a way, or a doorway. I've heard of that. That people say that there's places around the world that may be actual portals, actual stargates of a kind. But then there's this program in the 80s, I believe it was, that let's see here. So the Stargate project, that where it was about remote viewing and about getting information without going to a place, somehow getting into the state and going through protocols designed to get information that could then be used for any sort of surveillance or military or sabotage or just defense purposes that you want, based on all this. And this is things that have happened over the years. This is
Mhm.
you can do a ton of research. I didn't go deep into it because we're kind of doing an overview of like everything that we can find. But if you just
Right.
want to go down a major, if you want to spend a lot of time on something, you can look up just all kinds of stuff, programs, and on this program. So there's programs on shows on this program. There we go. That's better. So yeah, and this is things that supposedly it was eventually shut down because it didn't work. Some people said it didn't work. There was not enough evidence of it. But then you always have to wonder, well, was that really it, or did it just get they just do better job? They do a better job at hiding their continued work under different names and just classify it all over again.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't work could mean a lot of things. Like maybe a lot of it did work, but not the way that they were hoping it would work. Maybe it didn't accomplish what they were actually trying to accomplish because we're not even sure why they were trying to accomplish this. It wasn't just about finding the reaches of of consciousness or understanding things like that necessarily, was it? I mean, for the military to invest money in these projects, what was the outcome they were hoping for? Was it just to see that people were psychic or that they had telepathic powers or could remote view or, something of the kind? Or it was probably to accomplish some other goal. And so maybe that didn't work out or it needed to evolve into something else, or that was actually just a starting point, it got them to such a point, but not to where they were trying to go. And I was going to mention too a Stargate. There's a new thing that I thought of when you mentioned it. There's a new thing called Stargate. It's Stargate Project, and it's like a $500 billion, you know, project that started out in 2022, but it's been announced. It was announced on January 21st, 2025. And so Trump and it's going to be these AI data centers,
Yes.
and there's like I can see here I had to pull it up 20 large AI data centers, but it reminded me of that's the new Project Stargate, and it's got to do with all these, which so anticlimactic. It feels like okay, you got some
Yeah.
AI stuff, unless the AI is not what it appears to be, or these will not be used for AI. There's so many of these caveats because we don't know, though they may be trying to be transparent. It is obviously these were top secret projects, and
Right.
all that stuff is being released. A lot of it's being released now. So much of it had been redacted anyway for a long time, and we don't know that. I mean, if something really incredible had happened, that was just too impossible to mention to the public, something like we've been talking about with, that there has been contact with intelligent entities, but we have sort of a soft disclosure about that when we think about, Aleister Crowley talking with Lamb or talking with what was the other one? Started with an Iowas, however you want to say. So there was a sort of getting information that way, and that whole entity was talking about, I mean, those entities, I guess, were talking about, um, you know, basically a new theosis, new sort of way of thinking of the world, that there was a new eon of time coming in, and there was all this spiritual aspect to it. And within all of that, there was just so weird because that tied into all the technology of going to NASA and that they would have to do all these different. That's when a lot of the scientific sci-fi projects begin with the splitting of the atom, and all of the sciences were geared towards that. But prior to that, I mean, already the governments of the world. If you go back to the I guess you could say like the 1400s in the church and the scientists there, that they were already doing wizardry in the sciences, and at that time was all held over to being a pharmakia and astrology and so on and so forth, and sciences of all the different forms of matter and so on and so forth. But it was all mixed in and hard to even tell the difference between like a magical ritual, or a science project, that they were much the same. And so, I mean, now this is just like, it's an evolution of that. And it's, more evolved, supposedly, as far as like the technological age that we're in. And I think that they're wanting to use this AI. They think that somehow it's going to further even more so into accomplishing whatever this big goal is, which I think is to like reach a point where there's sort of a system where they have all of the peoples on the planet underneath one sort of idea, or at least that all people are linked together, and that there's obviously some sort of overseer over that. Because I mean that's the gist of the one world movement, and the whole point for all of the but these science projects in general, not to get too distracted off with that, but it's all to gain higher intelligence from somewhere else, or to find out what they're actually dealing with the human psyche, and what they're going to be encountering should they try to do this. I think in a way, like there's a possibility that if humanity were to reach some kind of if they did have instruments that could induce telepathic states, or if they have instruments that can be used that access, some latent genetic something or other, or if there's something in humanity that is genetically predisposed to what it would appear, like in the genetic code, if there's something they may come across that if they open it up, kind of like with the idea that adolescent children can cause poltergeist. If there's something to that effect or some concern there, which I think that in the Stranger Things, it was alluding to that to some extent. The same with Firestarter and things like that, that it's unharnessed energy. Why would that cause that kind of phenomenon? And so, I mean, that's kind of linking into a lot of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even with the Project Stargate and all the tests that were done there with Joe McMoneagle and others, I remember reading somewhere that they were asked to look at other planets and even other times, and some of them did see other beings that seemed to be aware of them. And so you have this thing that starts off as well, it's just a basic government experiment. It's nothing too major, nothing too out there. And even if people are figuring out things, finding ways to look at other places around the world with their minds, that's still amazing. But it's not. We've been hearing about, again, as we've been talking about here, there's been stories of people that have been able to do similar things throughout time with telepathy and just knowing things and just telekinesis and all these different things. There's been stories of this throughout time, and I think once you get enough people that have, or once you get people that have money that can support these kinds of experiments, they're going to start somewhere and probably can always continue somewhere. And there's no telling how far they'll go and what they'll discover. And it's just really amazing that that's something that was being looked at before the 2000s. This idea of like, oh, the 2000s, it's going to be a huge thing. Well, yes and no, but yeah. So it's just to me that even with the stuff that we know, it always makes me wonder how much is there that's just still kept so secret that we don't know, and how much of it is in these places that are underground. All those things. The other thing too, I was just thinking about with the AI. I wonder if they're. I mean, we've talked so much about before about how fiction works into all this and how it predicts things. I'm just wondering now if with the new Stargate thing, if it's going to turn out to be something almost like Xavier's Cerebro from the X-Men.
100%.
If there's going to be, that's what I can see that happening with, but of course with under government control, which there are elements of Xavier having ties to government programs anyway in the comics. But so yeah, I could see that happening too. And just the way it happens in fiction, I mean, my gosh, there's an entire multiple TV series about the portal version of like a Stargate. There's all kinds of stuff throughout. Like you mentioned there, Firestarter. Stephen King has been sort of looking into the whole experimentation idea in his works for years. I believe with him it was The Shop was his fictional sort of paramilitary organization that was top secret, that was into a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. Only, of course, they were authorized to do whatever they thought they had to, and including terrible things. And, I believe I reviewed Firestarter. I thought I did. If not, I will review it at some point. But they experimented on the main character, Charlie, this young girl. They experimented on her parents, and with chemicals and things. And her father had some kind of minor ability that he was able to, I think it was developed through these programs. And then his daughter, had literally explosive fire abilities. And that was the whole idea behind Firestarter, that this government organization wanted to find out how she was able to do what she could do. So, and that's a continuing theme in a lot of King's stories. You have in The Mist, there was a government, a military installation that was supposedly doing tests, and everyone was wondering what kind of tests they were doing. And then you had this mist that showed up in this small town. And I won't spend the rest of the show going over all the Stephen King stuff, but just a couple of examples here. And out of this mist came all these terrible looking creatures, and the planet literally shook, and there were giant cracks in it that no one could see down to the bottom of them. And so, and that's one example of a couple of examples of that. And so, as always with these things, so often you see fiction and reality circling each other with all these subjects. So, yeah, looking at the chat here. So yeah, everyone was talking about Stephen King and yeah, just these connections. So, but yeah, so there's Stargate. There's I lost my train of thought here, but so I think that there's still definitely things continuing to this day, that we may not hear about for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And especially with technology as it is now. So, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, the sci-fi writers, I think that they're innately linked with a lot of this technology. L. Ron Hubbard, with his and Arthur C. Clarke, but all of them involved in being a part of basically like a secret society of sci-fi writers. All of them knew each other. L. Ron Hubbard, of course, we've talked about him already a little bit, but all the sci-fi writings he had. And there were other books too, I can't remember which ones, where they're literally describing like a nuclear technology. And I heard that there was some writing actually that was pulled. There was a book that was written, I don't have any, the article in front of me, but I read about it, this was like months ago. But there was some book that was written, and it literally detailed so closely, it was that it described nuclear technology. So much so that they actually pulled it off the shelf for a little while. And so I think that there is a link between the sci-fi writers and then in these government installations, at least that they all kind of seem to be hanging out in the same sort of, military balls and things like that, or invited as guests to certain events. But you have all the idea of like the secret societies like Ordo Templi and things like that. Or, the OTO, the Golden Dawn, all these spiritists too, and that big movement of the paranormal, that there is some type of link between them. And then, I was thinking, it wasn't just the sci-fi writers. There was something else you said. It made me think. It was, let me think for a minute. Because it's easy to lose your train of thought when there's so much, because you're saying a lot of things. I'm trying to think too about it as you're talking. And I don't write any of it as you're talking. But it made me think of, I think it was, I don't know, it'll come to me. But basically that there is some kind of link, I think, just in the world of the sci-fi writers, that they were imagining these things that could happen. That's what it was, transhumanism. So there was this sort of sci-fi movement that was going on, over in Russia. It started out as just basically like religious writings and things like that. It led into and was talking about this ultimate state for mankind where they would create the transhumanist dream and, resurrect the dead and so on and so forth. I did a video about it, sort of just when I'd first heard about it. But that itself, it sounds like sci-fi, but they were equating this was how they were going to, they were going to reincarnate all of their ancestors. This was some sort of religious obligation. They had to come up with the technology of how they were going to do this. And linked into all of that was the science that would be the foundation for how they would send a rocket to the moon. That was where they got the plans for the trajectory for the rocket, of how they would, the mathematics of how they could possibly do that. And that was sort of based out of writings. So you have like the whole, even if you think about why do some books take off in publication? Why do some, sort of stories or authors, why do they stick around and they become these household names? And they're carrying these sort of themes. And the same thing with films or with anything. It's all controlled by some hierarchy of individuals who decide what will take off and what won't. There's no accidents with that. And then you have that linked into, the military is always this sort of weird, the military industrial complex being this sort of, it's not just the funding of the military, it's all these different project outlets that spring from it. And like when we're talking about with the sort of, are they doing some sort of, ESP studies with, the very edges of the human psyche? And is that what they're doing at these deep underground bases? Are they communicating with these, higher intelligences? Ultimately, they have incredibly bizarre views. John Dee. If you go back, and we're just thinking of the present day government as we think of it, as it was developing in the United States, and particularly in the 1920s on, after World War I, and going forward, because prior to that, the United States was kind of a mess, government-wise. It had been through multiple different wars with Britain, with France, on and on, the French Revolution. And so America was still this budding sort of government. But prior to that, you had John Dee, over in England, in that whole area of there, and all those different royal lines, that they were involved very deeply in the occult and in doing these sort of, I guess you would say, rituals in the courts, where they were conjuring up these entities. And this is just a continuance of something that's already happened before. In a lot of these expeditions that they would have up to the North Pole, because Queen Elizabeth, she had expeditions to the North Pole. And apparently John Dee had gotten some maps and things like that through his rituals. So he was able to see a route, and so the story goes. And so you have, it's just a continuation of the world governments attempting to accomplish beyond human feats, or to become like there's a godlike belief system. There's all the things to do with royal blood. This sort of carrying on of something that at one point in time they believed ruled the world or is superior to humans, and that if they believe that they are somehow superior to the common people, which apparently they think that they are more fit to rule, that people can't rule themselves, that seems to be a continuing theme. But they're constantly looking for something. They're trying to accomplish something with these types of projects. I think that there is a directed goal towards it. There's where they even get the ideas for these sorts of projects, or why they would even be doing some of these things. Like the MK Ultra thing, it's like beating a dead horse talking about MK Ultra, but the whole point of trying to create multiple personalities or these super soldiers or whatever against, other nations, it sounds doubtful. There's probably some other, intentions behind it, and what they are, I have no idea. No idea.
Right. Yeah. So, one of the articles I found here, I think earlier I was trying to switch between articles, and I just couldn't focus on one. There's this one here. It's from, then we were talking earlier about universities and how that plays into all this, because so often I've heard about, it's not just like a government base where things are happening and it's all contained in the government. That could definitely still be in some places, but so often over the last several decades, they work with universities, and so you're able to find. One of the articles I found here was from UC Davis.edu, and the title reads "Psychic Spying" in quotation marks. Research produces credible evidence, and it says that secret government experiments on psychic spying have generated evidence of this, that humans have paranormal abilities. And this is, again, going back to all those powers of the mind that we've talked about before. And we didn't even cover all of those abilities last time. We kind of focused on just a few. But and the article here points out what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where even when there's evidence, people will interpret that evidence in different ways and find things that they say are sort of wrong with how the experiments were done. That to them sort of invalidates whatever the results were. And I understand that, but at the same time, to me, everyone is going to have, and I've talked about this before as far as just anything paranormal. Proof it's going to be different from person to person. And I don't think we're ever going to have everyone agree on any one thing because of one example or one piece of proof of something. And but this has been going on. This talks about Stargate, and remote viewing, and being used to look into places and look for objects and things. And now it does mention sometimes there would be a sender, a person who actually went to a place within, or that the remote viewer was going to look at. But other times there wouldn't be that. So there's examples of both. So there's all different ways that these experiments are done. And so the whole idea is figuring out or getting results that are better than chance, better than that can be obtained through just random chance. And this is connected to the CIA, and of course this is has to do with, again, back in the 1970s and 80s. There was supposedly a concern about a psychic gap with the Soviets at the time, and which is I mean, I guess I can understand that, but the thing is, how do it's just, there's so many people out there that did not believe any of this was possible. So for an agency to go into it, either they were doing this to, I guess, maybe frighten their enemies, or there was something actually to it. And to me, I have a feeling there's something actually to it, just because of, again, all the historical examples that we went through last time of all these abilities people have had before there was any kind of way to do these modern experiments on these topics. And so yeah, there's something going on there, and I think it's going to continue to go on. And I think that technology will be a part of it, but as far as how far that goes, I don't know. But yeah, so there's just, I will include all these articles, like I said, in the Discord channel for all the show information, and you all can check them out. I already put them in the chat for this channel, but there's just so much there. It's hard to pick, hard to know where to really go without like reading the articles one by one, and there's just so much there. So, but yeah, I think it's we could go into any one of these projects and do a whole show on it. I don't know if we really need to do that, but also it's hard to, we may have to think about that if we want to do that sometime.
I mean, we could do that. The thing is that, with all of these sort of projects, or the different publicized things that we have now, where we're hearing about, oh, they were doing this over here in the Soviet Union at that time, or they're doing this over, in China or Germany or wherever. Or like when you have like CERN, you have the Large Hadron Colliders, and we have them all over the United States. You know, you have all those different things going on. Um, and they all seem to be like they are connected. But it's gonna be difficult to sort of see all of those at once. I mean, because you pick up one thing over here when you're thinking about like the Montauk Project, but then you trying to see that in a big picture scope of what it all looks like. The Nazi Bell, and they were trying to do, you know, can they create, anti-gravity technology and so on and so forth. So all of that combined, though, it's so much. I think as far as the technology moving us all into a direction, I think it is a sort of progressive trying to bring society along with this goal, whatever this ultimate goal or ultimate progress is, as they see it for humanity. I think there's something with that. I think we see that now with the technology already, with the internet and the web. That was the steps that was part of the technology that's trying to get them to where they're trying to go. It's just a boundary of languages and all of that space and trying to close the gap. But we're seeing that with smart cities, the idea that they want to kind of control like where people will be located. So, and strategically located probably for a certain, for whatever reasons, for efficiency. But in addition to that, to be able to manage the people better, so that they could, if they're trying to bring humanity to some kind of eclipse of sorts, then I think that they are working on that right now, that we are a part of, we're seeing all the technology around us being an offshoot of that ultimate goal, of bringing society to whatever point they're trying to get to. And there's a distraction involved with all the entertainment, but the entertainment is also sort of suspending the anticipated outcome. So there's sort of an idea already about what people are expecting the possible paranormal future or the ultimate outcome for mankind, what it might look like. And it's been guided that way. And I would say too that a lot of the technology we're hearing about come out, or a lot of the sort of secret underground top secret operations that they are releasing through these documents that were withheld for so long, that are now being disclosed, that there are probably also too just as even more people coming out with these personal stories and writing different books about it, of technology that they witnessed, that are not in the mainstream, that are not in the popular discourse. And there are so many different magazines throughout time too, of recent time, where people were talking about being involved in these projects, and most of them are not even most people wouldn't believe them, except that we can see more support for how it could have been possibly true. So hearing that they have things like MK Ultra, or hearing that they had Montauk, or that they, the experiments they were doing on Long Island with the eugenics programs, and you see that transferred from Long Island over to, ironically, to Nazi Germany, where they were doing similar experiments to try to create a Superman. So, and the same thing with the Soviets. The Soviet like this new idea of some type of super state for humanity. And the same with the transhumanist thing, that this all seems to be linked together. And there's ultimate goals for what it might be, but it's such a big scope that you can't really narrow it down to what exactly the picture looks like. But it's always good to kind of touch base and sort of, do an inventory of all of it, best you can. But it's just such a huge scope,
Yeah. Oh, there's so many. I mean, like you said, it started with magazines and things like that, and then once the internet got here, and then talk shows, podcasts, and things, and ways for people to send in their experiences. I mean, just there's so many accounts of people that say I think I was in. There was a show I listened to a while ago where this guy was saying, I think I was in. I was sent to that Dulce, New Mexico, the Dulce base,
Mm-hmm.
and to guard like an entrance there. We didn't go in, but we were just told to wait there by this truck while things are being supplies are being dropped off or something. And that's all they did. And they were not told where they were going. They weren't told what the place was. And it was only like many years later that this guy figured out, based on, again, looking into the topic, that he may have been at one of the entrances to one of these bases. So it's and so there's so many of these shows and these podcasts and these websites, Reddit and other places that where they give people a chance to post the things, but most people, I don't think, even know about them or bother to know about them. And so you have all these accounts of people's experiences that are just as wild in many cases as what you see in fiction, in popular culture, in the TV and movies and video games and books and things like that.
Yeah, they've shaped what people can. I mean, if you think about the whole of society and the type of entertainment consumption and what they're actually consuming with their entertainment, there's an expectation of what is acceptable to be a possibility, and then what is just not, what is normal and what could possibly, be happening. So there's different degrees of what an individual could expect to be possible, So there's this sort of what the entertainment is presenting and how that controls the expectation of the masses and what they can and can't accept. What's a correct level of bizarre, for them to be okay with, and what's too far that they know is just unbelievable, even though it could still be true. I think that, a lot of that is being controlled just by, and that in itself, we know that entertainment, pardon me, that entertainment is somewhat, it's also, I think the CIA had a great deal of investment in Hollywood, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't look into it right now to, I know we'd be talking about this. But it's all, even the entertainment industry was orchestrated. But the music industry was orchestrated. The Soviet Union, there was something called Young People's Records, or Records for Young People or something like that, and it came out in the I think it was like the 30s or something. But it's like folk music for young people to be played in kindergartens around the United States. It was a subscription sort of deal, but even that, that was that was coded as Red Scare, Soviet control, communist control. But even the music that was hypnotic, that the tempo was it was designed to be that way. And I think I brought that up actually on Mike's show last. I think I did. At least I was thinking about it at the time. It's something I came across recently. So just that, from the music to the entertainment industry to everything that we read, like we were talking about earlier, that I think only certain books do get published, and that there are these publishing companies that are involved. You'll notice that, and a lot of the publishing companies and the books that are coming out of those, that they were involved in, a lot of these, ironically, in a lot of these projects and programs during the right before, after World War One, and during World War Two, they were involved in many of these sort of, these big government projects that people were unaware involved with. Like the eugenics program in the United States was huge. I've been reading a book about it, and that's why it's kind of playing in my mind a lot. But the mental institutions and the sort of cooperation between all these different groups to try to create a superhuman, and the way that is linked with the developments with understanding the human genome, how that's all connected, and how they came across a lot of the stuff we talk about now with gene editing and all that progress. It did come out of initially the studies that were being done by these scientists that were involved also with that, and that were hung at Nuremberg. It came out of that. So that a lot of that came out of occult information and ritualistic secret organizations. I mean, these different secret orders are not a theory; they are a fact. People are members, and they are honorary. They're considered to be honorable positions to be in for the good of society in general, or for helping humanitarian things. So it's also closely linked because it's the world that they are building, but where exactly it's going and why it would have to be tied into all of this, bizarre secret projects as well. I don't know, but there clearly is a link in all of it. So it is worth talking about and it's interesting. And it's something you don't often get to. I mean, you can think about it, but to talk about it with others who are also thinking about it is particularly entertaining to some extent. You know.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole other show um, on that, the connections between the entertainment industries and these secret groups, and then government and militaries. The institutions, or the asylums and all that. That to me is just, that's a whole other topic as well, because so often those places, when they get shut down, there's it seems like there's still so much energy left in those places, and whether it's actual consciousness or souls or not, there I can't think of a single abandoned or closed down asylum or institute, mental health facility that was closed down, that I haven't heard about some paranormal activity going on there after the fact. Some cases even during, but definitely after the fact. And so there's a whole connection there with how much of our energy does get left behind, especially when it's people that are dealing with so much,
Mhm.
just turmoil, and they're dealing with themselves and with their environment in ways that the rest of us don't have to deal with a lot of times. Um,
Right.
and so, yeah, and I do think too, we did focus a lot, as far as like when we were trying to figure out what to do for the show, focus a lot on these experiments that take place in buildings and in military bases or installations and or colleges and things. But I think there's also, as we've been just describing there, there's a lot of I think there's a lot of experimentation that goes on just on a large scale. I think that's what a lot of popular culture and um, these connections to all these different parts
Hmm.
of society now that are so big and have so much funding. I think that a lot of that is also experimentation in a way, and just at a larger scale, and maybe not with so much of a. It's not as we don't know the parameters that are being set, or the all the details of how the experiment is being run, until probably many years later.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick look here. So in the 1930s, there were like 1 million people in America that were in mental institutions, and it was increasing like 80% per year until they started to have these overcrowding situations. Those mental institutions, though, they were built for some of them are incredible architecture. I mean, you
Hmm.
think about that, and the advancement from there, you have the prison system in the United States too. These are huge institutions, whether it's the mental institutions, the prison systems, bigger than anywhere in the world. And that the United States it's really bizarre what the United States of America actually is, and the educational system and everything about the United States. It looks like a big project unto itself. The United States is just a very interesting country in general, and the way that the government is formed. And but now we probably think that because we're in it, like we're living here in the United States, and so maybe it's more prevalent in that regard. I don't know. I just think that it's a perfect situation, as well as we were saying with the the availability of the soldiers in the military industrial complex and at these different air force bases or wherever the case, that they have availability of participants because they are, they're obligated in a lot of ways to participate in some of these projects. So kind of like with the Philadelphia experiment, that it's presented as war games, or there's some sort of, it's for the progress of whatever cause, and so they find themselves involved in these things, and they come, and it's just the availability of the people to do this sort of experimentation on is convenient when you look at the mental institutions and the prison system and the military system. And then we've seen it with, the educational system, what they've been doing with that as a mass project of, I don't know. It's just sort of, I think that the entertainment industry coming out of the United States, coming out of the West as it has with the film industry and everything, and what a huge project that was, and television in general, and the radio, like, all of it, the whole system of the way that the world has been changed by the. Now, if it hadn't been the United States, it'd been somebody else. So it's just
Right.
really bizarre, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, the way that, again, the paranormal is portrayed and all that as well. Whereas it's all supposed to be either not real and cute and funny and just comedy, or it's real and it's evil and it's all out to get you, and we're all doomed. It's just that it's one of those things that drives me crazy. But yeah, I think that was good. I mean, as good as we can make it. Again,
Yeah.
there's all these articles here. You can all check them out. I'll put them in a Discord channel. Anyone that listens to these shows, please join the Discord, because if I put all these articles in that we use for every one of these shows and every episode description, it would be a page-long episode description, and I don't want to do that to anyone. But yeah, so I can't remember if we had a topic pick for next time or not. We will figure that out throughout this next coming week and go
Mhm.
from there. But thank you as always, Jen, for being here and talking about this with me.
Thank you too, James, and congratulations on getting that merch shop up and
Thank
with
you.
the the plans for Patreon and everything. And I had a great time visiting with you, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Always glad to. And yeah, so um, this has been great. Everyone, if you want a more structured, again, more sort of structured view on all this or look into all this, definitely check out the articles and we'll go from there. And yeah, so then we can you can make your own decisions and conclusions on all that and go from there. Like I said, we have a few different possible topics, so that we could probably go with next time. So I don't know what next week's show on Saturday will be about, but we'll see. I know we'll find something. And yeah, so don't forget the episode description. You'll find all the links to all the friends of the show. My co-host here, as we were talking tonight, Jen, the Arcane Observer, and again Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio and the station, Trouble Minds Radio, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, and then of course to check out if you would like to, and if you want to support the show, you can either check out the Patreon and or the merchandise page. So support is never expected, but always appreciated. And yeah, so that'll do it for today. Thank you all for being here, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.